Yeah, this has probably been the longest or the most extensive clinic tour. I mean, it's most definitely the most extensive clinic tour that I ever did, and perhaps the most extensive clinic tour that anyone ever did. Like, we did approximately 20 countries in 5 continents in 2.5 months, and the feedback was really good. It was almost, say, like better than I anticipated. Like, we had in certain territories we had huge turnouts, like, you know, up to 1,500 people who showed up to like a clinic, which is really good for like a drum clinic. And it was interesting to understand a little bit more about the local territories, like, you know, what are their concerns, what are their challenges, you know, getting a little bit of the insight about their know-how about drums, but also their economic situations, you know, and that was very interesting, and that was a learning experience. But I had a good time. It's a taxing tour. I'm gonna be very tired when this is over, but it was a positive experience, like, in general. Like, was great. Well, as I explained to people at the clinic, the idea to make a pedal was not like that. I woke up one day and we're like, I'm gonna put a pedal out on the market, but it was a long process. It was like a journey that almost took 10 years, and it was like a puzzle piece that basically the onset on why I got interested in like pedals is because I was frustrated with what was available on the market, and I realized that I had to work against obstacles where in the very beginning I wasn't really aware what those obstacles were, but I started to buy pretty much every pedal which is on the market today, and I play every pedal which is out there, and at some point I started to cannibalize pedals from different brands. Like, I will combine frame from one brand with the footboard of another one, and use the sprocket of like another one, and then I started to make my own custom-made pieces. So I got insight into the manufacturing of like pretty much every brand which is out there, and also what the philosophy was. So at some point I started to really invest myself into vintage pedals too, because I got interested in how things were done. And the fulcrum basically was the Martin Fleetwood pedal, which is later became known as the floating action, or like the old Gretsch pedal from 1937 or like early 40s, and all the pedals on the market today are basically coming from that DNA, and it's 98%, I would say. And but I realized there was a vast difference between those pedals and what we have today. And what was different is that those old pedals had a much better balance between the actual stroke and the way the beater returned after the stroke, where those sticks were more like kind of like a super perfectly balanced 7/8 stick, which is great to play acoustic music, because back in the 30s music was not amplified. Drummers played on 20-inch bass drums, so they played with a very light touch. And then as music started to get amplified, the toolings had to be replaced for those old machines. The industry decided to make them more top heavy so that they would be able to generate more punch with a stroke. But unfortunately the balance of those old pedals got lost, and this is why we have the pedals which are on the market today are basically top heavy. So those pedals that we have on the market today are basically 7/8 drumsticks with weight attached to the shoulder, which give you more punch, evidently, but also you lose the calibrated balance. So if those old pedals were 7/8s, my stick is basically a 5B. So that was the idea, to recalibrate the same balance properties that will work with today's music volume, and which is definitely louder. So you know, those old vintage pedals, they're perfectly fine to play a jazz gig, you know. But if you need to get the type of volume that requires you to bury the beater, you can't. It makes it very hard to play out of the bass drum, and I base all my techniques that I do everything with my leg work is basically uses the same principles as what I use with my hands, which is you know, the Gladstone principles and Moeller principles and all the hybrid principles that combine those different technologies. And in order to do that, you need a device that translates what your foot does in a very linear manner, and which is perfectly balanced. So this was the reason why I couldn't pull those techniques off effortlessly on the pedals which are on the market. So that made me create that pedal. So it was basically a very selfish motivation or motive to like put it out, because now I don't have to think about it anymore. And SONOR thought that the idea was feasible enough to market it as a product and go a different way, although the whole industry might probably at this point disagree with like the pedal. So it's like showing the way with an original idea, with some very old ideas. Like a lot of that stuff on that pedal is like old, you know. It's just that it's collapsible, you know. That's kind of like in a way new, because only because of the past 20 years the drum industry embraced base plates, which stabilizes the pedal but makes it very hard to carry around. So the collapsing mechanism is definitely new. And yeah, that's kind of like sums it up. There's more to it, but you know, that's the basic idea. Well, I think it's a pedal for everybody, but the thing is, you know, some drummers are used or played their whole life on a pedal that was unbalanced. So maybe some drummers might have to recalibrate their technique, but so far the feedback that I've been getting from the pedal was really good. I mean, a lot of drummers that are even, you know, top guys which are not SONOR endorsers, like Peter Erskine plays my pedal now, and he loves it, and you know, and he told me that he's been looking for the same thing for many years, and I heard the same thing from Steve Smith, as a matter of fact. So I think we're on the right path, you know, and we can possibly further develop it and maybe even refine it. Yeah. Well, I think it's a very good idea to learn how to play heel down, although most people play heel up. That's a good idea, I think. That will give you a lot of facility, you know, because once you bring your heels up, it becomes more difficult. You have to deal with different challenges. But playing heel down is like a good idea. And another thing which is very important, you have to listen to what it sounds like, you know. Like, you know, a lot of drummers get caught up with the technicalities and the physical things, which are very important, but and you have to take those into consideration, but it's important how it sounds like, you know, and once your heel comes up, you know, then there's a bunch of things, you know. I really recommend drummers to learn how to release the beater and come out of the head, which is difficult for a lot of drummers to do because they need the support of the bass drum head, but that's you know, those are vast issues that can be discussed. But I would say basically, you know, start heel down and try to release the beater from the head and listen to the sounds that you create. Well, on all those clinics, every night I had the identical drum kit, but it was always a different one. It was a new one, and what struck me as quite extraordinary was how extremely consistent they are. I mean, at some point, I wouldn't have noticed that it was a different drum kit. Like if someone would have told me it's the same drum kit every night with new drum heads, I would possibly believe that. And I'm not an easy guy to please. And the quality standard is very, very high. Like the shells are very, very good, and made it easy to like play. I really love the snare drums. The tuning range is really good. Good job. The main reason why I invested myself into, I mean, I'm a curious person to begin with, you know, and one of the reasons why I released a DVD about technique is because I knew that people were gonna buy it. You know, I would love to make a DVD about expressing yourself authentically behind the drum kit, but the market is not ready for that, unfortunately. So technique is important, but you can't overrate it. Like, you know, the main reason why I invest myself into like technique is because I don't want to think about it when I'm playing. You know, that's so. And if something bothers me, which has a technical nature, then I'm trying to find a solution to eradicate that problem so it doesn't bother me anymore. So, you know, technique is like, as long as you can express what you need to express, you can do whatever level you have, like technique, you know. So there's unfortunately too many drummers who get caught up into like the physical aspects of like drumming, because it's, you know, drumming is not a drum set is not a workout machine. It's a musical instrument. So you use technique to get the best sound, get the most effortless execution, or, you know, make life easier. So you don't have to think about it. That's my main concern when it comes to technique. Well, the approach that we take with NERVV is when it comes to creating the material that we record. You know, it's less of a songwriting process in the classical sense. I mean, every once in a while, I have a very specific idea for a bass line or a drum beat or a synth line, and then I will communicate that with the other guys, or I write it down and say, look, play this line or do that. But very often I just pick up the bass and I play it for John. So, you know, he gets a little more, you know, certain things are very difficult to like translate if you write it down in like notes, because when it comes to electronic music, everything is it's more about the feel, the phrasing, and the sounds. So then it's sometimes better if I just sing it to my guys, or I play it on the synth, or I play it on the bass, and then we communicate that. But very often, and most of the time, the material that we have emerges from collective improvisation, because we improvise a lot and we jam most of the time. Like a NERVV gig, to a vast extent, I would say 80% of what we do is improvised. So we jam a lot, you know, and then every once in a while, and we record a lot too. We record everything. So we go back and say, okay, 40 minutes into the set, there was a really good idea, and we clicked, and it was something that was a lot of fun to play. We go back, for instance, we listen to the recording, say, that's a cool thing, that's a good hook line, or a good launch point for a song. And we take it to the studio, or we further develop it, you know. We go, maybe we need a second part, blah, 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 you know, and then we develop that idea into a final arrangement, you know, and then we record it. So this is it's more of like, it's a little bit more like, I would say, what Miles did, you know, in the late 60s, early 70s with the Bitches Brew sessions, and it's a lot of editing too sometimes, you know, and basically learning what sounds good, or realizing what sounds good, and developing those things and consolidating those into final ideas, and avoid the things which are not so good. That's basically it. Well, the music industry, The music industry. The music industry, that's some 20th century shit. It's like, that's no longer really, as far as I'm concerned, you know, I don't concern myself with the change of the music industry. As far as I'm concerned, everything that had changed already. I'm like already past. I'm not inside the change of the music industry anymore. I position myself post music industry, because I think what you have to do, and what's happening, what has to happen for anyone who wants to make a living in this music business, or I wouldn't even use that word because it doesn't really exist anymore. Like, I mean, I don't think the major labels could keep existing anymore if it couldn't rely on like a back catalog of 6 years of music, with just the things which are done today. And I think we are having a process of democratization through you know, social network and internet, which, you know, has its assets, but also it's dangerous, you know. And I don't know really, because I'm not a psychic. I don't know where it's going to go, and the protocol for the future doesn't exist yet, because the future is not 10, 15 years. The future is 2, 3 years. You know, it could really change. So what I choose to do is, for the time being, and I'm doing well. I mean, I'm making a living from what I do, and I can take a break whenever I need one. So I'm in a very fortunate situation, and I believe that gives me a little bit slack to how should I say, you know, interact with the cultural or whatever happens in like culture, a little bit more like drunken master style. You know, you have to be flexible. You have to roll with the punches. You can't just like do your thing like this. You know, you have to be very, very sensitive and be able to change direction. But the most important thing, I think, you have to somehow have a very firm concept of principles that you have to follow. You know, if you don't do that, there's so much noise. If you don't have principles which are strong, you're going to have a really hard time. You're going to get really, really confused. So my principles are this honesty. I only do what I can believe in, you know, money, whatever, you know. This is like, there's three things, you know, there's a financial composite, there's an artistic composite, and there's a social composite, you know. So friendship, art, and money. And out of those three, I'm trying to have two with every project, at least. I mean, if I have three, then it's fantastic. So that allows me to maneuver and get from A to B. So I would say, I think the future belongs to artists, and there's a lot of creative artists. You know, it doesn't stop. You know, like the guy that has a talent like Hendrix. He's here somewhere. I don't know where he is. He might be in the Ukraine somewhere making electronic tracks, or he might be in Chicago, or he might be in Baden-Württemberg, or he might be in New York. I don't know. So the guys are around, but the guys with the important ideas and the new ideas, they won't be getting too much attention from the industry, I think, because what we need is radical ideas, you know. And the reason why we're here, the reason why I have this interview, is because in the 50s and the 60s, some people decided to do some radical things, you know. And rock and roll was a radical idea, and somehow I still believe in that, you know. I mean, unfortunately, the music which is called rock and roll is not rock and roll anymore. Like the music that is called jazz is not jazz anymore. But something like this will have to happen, and I believe the future belongs to the person that believes in that and will drive important culture from A to B, you know. And I don't have a recipe for it that will work, as I say, because the protocol of the next 15 years doesn't exist. It doesn't exist for nobody, for no industry. You know. My original intention with Secret Weapons for the Modern Drummer was to make a encyclopedia which includes all aspects, which is the feed too. However, at the time I was dealing with, first of all, like the challenge that it was so much material. Then also there was some components that simply I was missing. You know, I didn't want to start to communicate about bass drum technique if I wasn't sure about certain things. So I needed more time. That's why I decided to make the volume on hand technique first. And so in the past, I don't know, 10 years, my mind was always with further developing, you know, protocol for bass drum technique, because like hi-hat technique, because as opposed to hand techniques where we have protocol of 400 years from military and classical music and the last century jazz, the bass drum stuff is only 100 years old. So it's exactly 100 years old, and there's no protocol on bass drum technique. So where with Secret Weapons for the Modern Drummer I could basically hand down 70% of what I learned from other people and add my 30%. With the new volume, it's going to be quite opposite. So it's like 70% is my own observation, and 30% is a protocol that was handed down to me. So it's a much more adventurous volume, and it was also back in the days when I did Secret Weapon for the Modern Drummer. I played those Frankenstein pedals that I've been telling you about before. So now I have a pedal that you know is accessible, basically. So I thought it wouldn't really make sense to explain technical principles that are very hard to execute on the pedals which are on the market. I mean, there's like you know, most of the things on that volume are executable on any pedal, you know, but there's some of the stuff that not a lot of people can do, that I can do, that I will show to people, that requires a better pedal. So now I have it. So I'm in the process. I almost wrapped up pre-production and writing the script. So if everything goes well, and I can start shooting next year.